Man, here I am back in the old hometown. I was at the Owen Sound Cineplex. I was on my way back. We left late on Thursday night, and Ashley was like, "What theater are we going to?" And I was like, "We're going to the theater for Weapons, which we're here to talk about today. Everyone has seen it all differently. What format? I know I had to do regular. That was the only option we had. Adriana, to my utter disappointment, also did regular. What did you see it in, Brandon?
Regular.
Oh my
Yeah,
God, you
the
guys make me
the
sick.
well, that's the thing is like I assumed like every big movie that was like heavily advertised, there would be an IMAX option for this movie, and I think there was only a handful in Toronto, at least a handful that weren't like sold out on opening weekend. But yeah, the regular screenings was ample seating at like several different spots, and so I just picked the closest one closest to my end of day of work and went with my buddy. But yeah, I was a little bummed because typically there's a lot more IMAX showings, but I still think with like Superman, Fantastic Four, and some theaters with F1 still, there's no room for a ton of IMAX openings on this. So
I
sorry, buddy.
act I actively chose not to see it in IMAX, so I think I'm like worse here.
That's the Nick Chepley impression.
Yeah, you sound like how I did for Sinners, where I was like, I don't know if it's that impactful. I'm not. I think IMAX is a sham.
Well,
And then I
see,
saw 70 millimeter IMAX, and I was like, I was wrong. I was so wrong.
but see, I think seeing it in regular, I was like vindicated. I don't think this
Yeah,
is like an IMAX movie. Like, it's not essential to see it in
there are
IMAX.
some shots in it, which I'm sure we'll get into, where I really felt like the creativity behind the camera and some like the boldness and stuff. I think maybe would have been elevated, but it's one of those things. Like I said with Sinners, if I saw the regular version, I would have never known what I was missing. And then when I saw the regular after IMAX, I was like, I was cheated. So now I inherently assume I'm cheating myself by not seeing the biggest screening. But again, like my buddy's very
Fair.
particular. He'll say Limax when it's not the 70 millimeter. It's just the bigger screen, slightly better audio. So couldn't
Well,
even find a Limax for this one.
the real cheaters, the real cheater here is Cineplex, fucking charging $20+ for tickets. That's the
Amen to
real
that.
crime.
Well,
If it was less expensive, I would go more often.
I disagree with Adriana's comment about every movie is an IMAX movie as far as I am concerned. If it can be projected on whether it's IMAX or LIMAX, I'm a proponent of bigger is better. Especially in that regard, I think like to me it's just more of an immersion thing. It's the same logic of like why you want a bigger TV to a certain degree,
Not
and all
not
of
all
No,
that
of
not
kind of
to a
stuff.
us
certain degree.
not all of us can
Yes.
spend like $600+ on movies every year. I'm just
We'll have
saying.
less other
In
hobbies.
this
Just have one hobby
economy,
like I do, and it's way better.
I fundamentally agree with Adriana's standpoint as someone who earlier this year on the podcast was going on about the price of tickets causing expectations to be met. However, being somebody that works in entertainment with a corporation, I hope the CRA is not listening. I can write off movie tickets because it's research for film and TV work. So I
ooh,
can get a $600 tax deductible seeing $600 worth of movies. Just a weird flex, I know, but I agree with you. But I've only doubled down on this podcasting bit because it's technically a write off researching movies for the mise en scène and getting a better set dressing understanding. So
Learning how to dress sets better. Well, let me start off with saying I am mixed. I am hoping to find how I really feel about this movie in this conversation because I'm not sure. I'm part of it is disappointment, but I think part of it is disappointment in the sense that this is something I wish I loved but didn't quite. I think like I'm a net kind of positive on it, but I think we'll conclude my final thoughts. I definitely think it's worth a watch. For sure, it's an easy kind of recommendation, and it's also not like I went with people. Two of the four or two of the five of us uh, don't like horror movies and we're like freaked out about going. It's really not that kind of like Conjuring esque, like constant jump scares and whatever. It's a lot different than that. So if you're kind of turned off by that idea. I can say like it's a pretty low risk thing that way. But yeah, I'm excited to kind of just jump right into this one. So I'll leave it at that for my kind of high level spoiler free thoughts before we dive in. Well, that sounds
Sorry.
like Brandon signing up to speak next.
No, I gotta marinate. I too am a bit mixed, but I think I have stuff to say. I want to hear Adriana's take, so I can then have the most correct take going last. So no, I'm a coward. I'm sorry, guys.
Well, okay, I felt kind of similar to you, Shay. I didn't like. I was mostly positive on it, but I didn't love it. And that's kind of how I felt about Barbarian too, even though seemingly everyone thought that was like the greatest movie in the world, and this one too is getting like rave reviews. But yeah, I don't know, something about it, like, I don't know. I'll also have to process, I guess, through this conversation, but I think it is kind of a breath of fresh air in the current like elevated horror landscape, which I have thoughts about elevated horror, but just because it's so like unashamedly funny and like weird, and like both of his movies do that. So I'm glad he's out there making horror movies. It's just not my favorite thing in the world, and I have some issues with like some of the plot and structure things. So
I think to jump in on that, that was my big thing. I saw this Thursday, so I feel like I've digested it a lot and reflected a lot on like the Barbarian of it all. I was one of those people that saw Barbarian. It was like straight up inspired. I thought it was so fresh, so fun, genuinely creepy, understandable themes. It wasn't like super crazy deep, nor was it shallow. I really enjoyed the dynamics of that movie. So when Zach Cregger had this new movie coming out, I've seen a lot behind the scenes where he's talking about it, where he's like, yeah, I just picked a creepy thing, like kids disappear at night. Then I worked back from that, and I was like, okay, buddy. Part of it is we talk about like, oh, it's a fresh breath of air, to a degree, but I think my big issue with the comparison to Barbarian is Barbarian kind of starts laying in the humor a little sooner, a little bit more naturally, where the humor in this, without spoiling anything, I feel like is predominantly the finale, not even the third act. The finale is much heavier. Like, when we get into the spoiler half, I can give some examples where they try humor earlier, but it's still very edgy and macabre and almost like the tension. I think to, again, spoiler free, very surface level reasoning here. I had a really hard time rating this because I love Barbarian. I loved a lot of this movie. I would even say the first two acts I specifically was really digging into, and the structure I was buying into, but then the way maybe it concludes, I wasn't fully on board with why they chose to structure it certain ways. And I guess to summarize, my Letterboxd review was long legs vibes with two little star emojis next to it. Very unserious because I didn't want to spoil my thoughts for you guys. But I think if you know me well enough, it's a callback to it being a mid-August, really well marketed, very cerebral, intense, spooky, atmospheric horror movie with supernatural elements that is like 2/3 of it super, super foreboding and like a crazy idea, I guess. And then, when they dial the notch to 11, which I know Shea likes to see when they really just go for it, I found it did kind of make me fluctuate and end up ultimately mixed. But that's not to say I didn't expect that from Zach Cregger, who, again, had a crazy ending with Barbarian. But I just think that the tonal consistency of Barbarian, where it was flipping perspectives and it was introducing some comedic characters. I don't think there's really comedic characters in this movie, just comedic moments that are played really for like shock and intensity. But like Justin Long in Barbarian was hilarious, and it changed the pacing up in a very kind of natural flow, up and down, I'd say. Where here it was like intense horror for that first 2/3, and then by the end of it, when it is still horrific and balls to the wall, I just had a hard time reconciling it. So I guess if that's the general thoughts, do you guys want to dig in a little deeper?
One thing before we get into the spoilers that I did want to mention was the marketing campaign for the movie. I mean, like, I saw the trailer, but
it's
again,
everywhere.
only because
it was
it's funny
you say it's everywhere,
because
I I feel like I didn't see anything about this movie, and I didn't even know it was coming out until like a
You're
couple
not
weeks ago.
eternally online enough
Yeah,
like me.
you're not
No,
in the right bubbles apparently.
Yeah, you're out of the
Or
echo
wrong
chamber.
bubbles. Trust me,
Congratulations.
it's not always fun in film Twitter
which
where I've stayed.
I'm kind of happy to be out of the bubbles, to be honest. But
But like, so I did rewatch the trailer like last night when I got home, or this morning, I should say more accurately, from watching the movie, and I will give it a lot of credit. I only watched the first one, but I guess there's parts that they give away, which we'll dig into a little bit more once we get into the spoiler chunk and show like certain characters that aren't really revealed fully until later. And I'm glad I didn't see that cut of the trailer. But their first one is very, very good. It sets it up like literally just the setup, super basic. The kids go missing, they explain kind of that whole setup. And then that's really it, just some creepy imagery and whatever else. So I will say you can watch that if you're intrigued, but I don't think you need to. Like I said, I still feel confident in recommending this movie, particularly because everybody else watching it seems very high on this. Almost everybody. I was reading a bunch of stuff, just trying to kind of reconcile how I was feeling with the movie. But I want to give the marketing a lot of credit for playing that part well. But similar to Longlegs, I did think it will be problematic when they're saying like the best horror movie of 2025 again, and like hyping those things up. And again, like the horror elements definitely are there, and again, in the little more like some visuals, some tense moments and things like that. But like it's not, again, what I feel like the conventional sense of like horror. Like when you read that, you think definitively like the scariest movie and whatever. And I feel like that's more kind of a sin on audience kind of expectation. But I would just kind of caution that a little bit, because I think like even at best for me, this was like, again, a movie that I liked, but I really wanted to love, and I never ever really got there, even at moments we'll get to. But yeah, unless anyone has anything to add on that part, I feel like we can dig in.
Yeah, spoiler free. I would say the parts that I really love about it is when it feels more like a mystery and a pressure cooker. There's elements of like prisoners in this, and you think I hate how corny it is with like the Walking Dead of it. The horror is not the zombies. The horror is not the mystery. The horror is the people you deal with in real life. I think they have that element really well introduced. And I wish it lingered in there, but we'll get into that.
yeah, should we just
Adriana,
get into it?
you want to
Well,
just
yeah,
get into it?
I wanna kind of dig in on that point, because one of my problems, like, and I was up till like 4 in the morning, so we got back at probably 12:30, and I read and watched a bunch of stuff about this after, because I didn't know anything. I didn't do interviews. I didn't know anything. So I really wanted to dig in, because I knew I was colder on it than seemingly everybody else. Like Brandon, I think you gave it a 3.5 on Letterboxd, and that was
Which is low for me.
the
Yeah.
lowest follower rating that I had.
Yeah, and I'm
So
usually the
like,
guy that would be like, "This is god tier cinema." Like I was even looking at all the 4 stars I had. I did I did the math to figure out my percentage. 3.5 stars out of 5 on a scale of like 100% is only 70. It's far better than that, I think. But when you only have 5 stars to go, like I always call this like a 75% or like an 80%. Like it was like
yeah.
an A, but not an A plus, and that's what I always consider for like the 4 to 5 range. And yeah, I felt cold reviewing it. I felt like kind of disingenuous. I was like long legs vibes. But the more I sat on, I'm like, I think I kind of nailed it. Where it has similar time of year marketing expectations, the E word. But yeah, I really think if we dig into this, I love to
Well,
go.
but
Kind
one of the
bit by
things,
bit.
like specifically that you said that I wanted to hone in on, was that I feel like everyone drew parallels to this movie to a million different things. Like Magnolia, I heard Prisoners, I heard Pulp Fiction, and like all of these different things. And for me, I think the thing that kind of bothered me the most was that I understand like Magnolia because of the, kind of perspective shifts and
Yeah.
all that. Okay. Prisoners because there's a dad that's kids missing and is accusatory. But I feel like that is also maybe what highlights my problem with the movie, is that I see the kind of comparisons everyone's making, And in none of those regards did the movie make me feel as strongly as any of the movies it's being compared to. So, like, there
Yeah.
is that component of Prisoners, like, in the most thin, kind of basic setup way. But in terms of effectiveness, it was never to the level of Prisoners. Like, Prisoners shook me as a
Oh
movie.
yeah,
And,
Yeah.
that
like,
went
the amount
to the
of kind of,
nine.
right, and the
Like
amount of,
that.
like, pressure that like Josh Brolin's character puts on her is yelling at her from across the room in a public meeting and confronting her at a gas
And
station.
painting
So
her
like,
car.
yeah,
Okay,
right.
all
And
right, all
so
right. Let's
like,
dig into it. Spoilers.
yeah.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
if
we're
that's
there.
not
We're
already
already
clear,
there.
yeah, we're
Oh,
already
okay,
gone.
okay.
But like
even
that's kind
even
of
the
my
like
thing with this.
Magnolia structure, like I was thinking about the structure a lot because I was like, something about this just like didn't quite work for me. Like, and I think it's because it felt kind of purposeless. Like I don't think it really
Yes.
added enough. And I think spending so much time with some of these tertiary characters just made the movie feel like it dragged on for me. And yeah, it like aside from being a kind of clever way to reveal information, it beyond that it didn't really do anything. Like we didn't learn anything new from seeing things from another character's perspective, and it often just like cut past those points.
Padded
So
the
it,
runtime a bit.
yeah, it felt really like I don't know,
I think
pointless.
we were talking about. I think it was us. I was talking about like Strange Darlings last year that I really liked. But Chris's my
Oh
heard
my
was
god,
like
yes.
if
Similar.
you take that act structure of following characters' perspectives away, it almost you could call it a little manipulative to keep you invested in the plot. Where if you just went start to front, you might lose interest. And I kind of had to reconcile that. And same here. I think it's a very fun way to approach this. However, yeah, like you, I think because we do see kind of the same, like almost 24 hours really playing out from different perspectives, I like the initial insert to their lives and you get a glimpse of who they are. And I almost wanted more out of these characters because they set up so much stuff. Like, show me that guy's failing marriage. Show me Josh Brolin's, life. Even Julia Garner, I think they set her up as this like troubled alcoholic teacher who cares too much. And that's it. They just run off of that cliff immediately. Like as soon as they establish everybody to the amount they need, they just went off. And yeah, I think similar. As soon as we get to the Alex perspective, the little boy, the one surviving kid, you wonder why. As soon as we get to his perspective, I was kind of like, I've already pieced together like 80-90% of what's going on here. And when they pull back that like last 10% of the veil, I was kind of like, cool, neat, but I did feel like that was the part where I was no longer like on the edge of my seat. I was kind of like waiting to get to the meat and potatoes, the plot. And once we cut back from him in his room after they explained so much to Josh Brolin and Jennifer Garner in their car out front, I'm like, thank God, we're getting there. The final show, like it's the plot's coming back. They're finally connecting. Like you talk about a Magnolia or like Babel or Crazy Stupid Love. You when you know the movie is doing that perspective shift so much, you get excited for every point of view to intersect. And so I had a sigh of relief when I saw them in their car and we were leaving Alex's POV. Very effective for like 10 minutes, but around 15-20 minutes of kind of showing like the torture and trauma he was dealing with from the home front. I was very much like, is the movie about this? Because they're focusing a lot of time. I really want to get back to the main plot about a witch and children and a mystery about the townsfolk going nuts over this. And yeah, it was all over and it over explained a lot because of the structure. And it found me just getting a little bit kind of tired near the end. Even if the end pops off in a very fun way, I think once they let the gas off and they explained everything that we were piecing together from all the perspectives, I just kind of found myself lowering the score, lowering my like really enjoyment of the movie a bit. So
Yeah, I don't know if this makes sense, but like what I was trying to think of to articulate it was it felt like the movie was written for plot, not story. Like
Yeah.
it's literally intentionally just a mechanism to withhold information, and that like propels like again just details, and like which to me is like the plot side of that, where it's not about like kind of holding back things or like even again the mystery. Like the movie peaks to me on the setup,
Yeah.
and it never, even with the swing at the end, it never kind of matches that, even though like I enjoyed the ending. Obviously, I feel like you said that you hinted in the non-spoiler part that I would be pro this ending, and I am. But yeah, like it's super weird, and I found myself kind of questioning the logic a lot of it, like as we were going on. Um, like particularly like at the very beginning with like Julia Garner's character, like when she went to the house and there was weird shit at the house, like that made me. I'm like, all right, I'm like, how the fuck is she the
Yeah.
one cracking like that? Like, and no one else has noticed this odd. Like, they've been talking to this kid. Like, how has this been getting by? And then the ultimate kind of explanation we get from the movie did not work for me at all. Like,
No.
as a believable like
I
excuse for that
I
at
had
all.
so many like plot issues with the reveal
Yeah.
of like did his parents just not have any friends in town? No one questioned what happened to them, why they weren't showing up to things. Did they not have jobs? Like
Yeah.
the they cleaned the house up real good, and that fooled the police. Like they say the
Because
FBI
the
is
police
involved
only
too,
ever
and no
came one
one.
time.
Yeah, so all of that stuff just like really started to fall apart in the moment, but even especially after the movie ended and I was thinking about it. And I think going back to like what you said about the writing for plot, and Brandon, you also mentioned that Zach Kreger started with this idea of like the creepy children, the way they run, this sort of premise, and then just sort of built the script from there. I think that's like super super evident in all of these like structural
Hmm.
and plot issues. Like he just kind of like went built this story from this idea and in like this patchwork kind of way, and it doesn't really hold together that strongly because there's no actual like strong narrative underneath it all. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that stuff
I
really kind of
I would
got
definitely
me.
say like comparing this to Barbarian, which I like kept rethinking about going over my reviews for that and how I was and comparing it to Barbarian, it feels like it fills in a bigger story as the movie progresses, and that's over like generations and time, and it does feel a little bit more like well grandiosely wrapped up or like at least explained to take us back into the nightmare that we were in. Where this movie, because it does take place over the course of like a week, and the main elements in the movie are like over a few days, yeah, it did feel a little needless. Like, I liked a lot of the stuff with the cop and the drug addict characters, but I feel like when the movie went from Julia Garner to Josh Brolin, and you finally see him confront her at the gas station, and you think they're about to start like doing the Scooby Doo mystery team up and solve what's going on, and she's got the info about the house, he's got the coordinates like dialing in, and I was like, oh, we're about to like it's getting going, like this is that second act high at the start. And then I think it's when you see the principal, is it Benedict Wong? He's the
Yeah.
guy from Marvels. He's
Uh-huh.
the other Sorcerer Supreme. Anyways, it's nice to see him not doing Marvel movie. But yeah, when he runs into frame out of the background with his eyes all fucked up and he's doing the Naruto run, I was horrified. And then they slam cut that to the cop's perspective, and they're filling in the gaps on his marriage and showing us what we've already seen Julia Gardner. And I was like, okay. And then the stuff they do with the crackhead in that scene, I was then like, oh, like this is good, like this is good again. And then they slam cut to another perspective, and then eventually by the time they show what's happening with the principal to make him do the Naruto run, heat seeker, thing, I was kind of like, oh, I forgot. I'm excited to see the payoff. They explain a bunch, they show a bunch, and again, all really good scenes, like individual scenes. I was like, awesome. But yeah, just the way it kind of jumped around, it felt like it wasn't super effective, especially when the pacing for the first half of the movie, and again, the mystery was so strong, and I was on this roller coaster going 100 kilometers an hour, really excited. It did pull me back just to then build it back up and then pull me back again with Alex and then build me back up to a crazy finale. But by that point, I was kind of like losing a little bit of
Hmm.
steam, and I feel like they could have cut a lot of the cop stuff. The drug addict stuff I like because that's
Well,
ultimately what
but
gets us the insights. But
the thing
it's
with the cop and the drug guy is that the problem is those characters exist to purely reveal the mystery to the audience. Like if we only follow Julia Garner's character and Josh Brolin, we get to the house, but we don't understand the context of anything that's going on. And so it's really, that's what I mean again about the plot. Like, it's really those characters feel like they exist to contribute just plot things. And I feel like they dangle, like, particularly on the cop side plot, like, why is this whole angle with his wife and the dad, and like, I
Yeah, the
like, I
father-in-law,
guess it,
police
like, to
chief,
me
nepotism
it's
hire,
to
like
like, right, it's to maybe try and like mask the fact that his plot line only exists so you can reveal the mystery. But like, it didn't work for me. Like, I was like kind of just like, I really felt the start stop nature of this, and again, like, isolated. Like, I kind of was into each individual storyline more or less, but I didn't, like, it ultimately didn't serve a purpose in the movie other than to be a plot device. And that's where I kind of like, I feel like it really affects the pacing, because
Yeah.
yeah, like, you're just here, like, again, so like, oh, he assumes that no one's there, so he breaks in. Like, it was funny, I liked that moment, it was getting good reactions, but isolated on its own, but as part of the whole, it just felt like, oh, like, we're just trying to kind of weave this together. And again, like, the fact that, like, okay, the kids went missing, and like, during the writing process, why did they go missing? And the fact that he worked his way through it like that, definitely, like Adriana said, you can feel that. And I don't know the best way to like approach a kind of mystery like this, where maybe you have the beginning and end mapped out and you find your way in, but then we have the like, that part of it, I feel like, is just kind of where it really kind of falls apart for me on that level. I say fall apart, that's like over dramatic for what it actually does, but like, it just kind of like, I think it's, these are all things that prevented it from like really elevating for me on a higher level.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
agree.
would definitely say like the cop plot is where I find the most that I would like if I was the Zach Kreger, I would have reduced that a lot. Like there's a creepy scene where his wife shows up at the liquor store to confront Jennifer Gardner, and I think we were all expecting that to be another crazed town folk blaming them for the disappearance of their child. And I really felt like, you know, that could have been a crazy housewife for the same creepy scene. Totally would have worked. Do we need to know that they were trying for a baby and he still cheated? Like, I just felt like there's all these extra layers that they were like, and again, the father-in-law, did it have to be your father-in-law other than like that one awkward look in the hallway? I
Exactly.
hope there's smarter people than me that have broken this down and been like, well, the themes in this movie are about, I don't know, family or some Fast and Furious family line there. But you know what I mean? Like, I really feel like there's a lot in there that maybe I didn't understand and feel like is bloat. But I
Well,
think you, all
I
three of us
feel
are thinking it's
like,
bloat.
yeah, go
well,
Adriana.
so I mean, Nick and I talked a lot about this movie, and like he kind of read up a bit more about like interviews with Zach Kreger and stuff, and uh, apparently a lot of this movie was like he wrote to kind of deal with his grief over Trevor Moore's death, who was like one of the other members of Whitest Kids You Know, just like the comedy troupe that they were part of. And so like Trevor Moore died around 2:30 a.m. My assumption is that his official time of death was 2:17, the time the kids go missing. There's like all these like little things, like he's also, Zach Kreger has been sober for 10 years, and like he wrote his characters kind of giving in and drinking, falling off the wagon so that he wouldn't, that kind of thing. Like he was really kind of like trying to deal with his grief and like trauma around this, and like alcoholism, and like growing up in like an alcoholic household where you, as a kid, you kind of end up having to take care of your parents, which you see that with Alex at the end. So
Yeah,
he's
that's
kind
pretty
of
apparent.
cramming a lot of these like big personal heavy themes into a container that isn't really built to hold all of those things. I think that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
how it feels to me, and that's where some of these like I, I don't know why this is really in this, like maybe come from, like same with like the floating rifle. I thought that was such a weird, bizarre
Yeah,
image.
I do want to talk about that for sure. Like, is that to pay off the title, or is that just cool visuals? Like,
Is
what's
it a political statement? Is it like? And I think in interviews he's like, I don't even know what it means. It's like kind of up to the. And
Yeah, I saw
you
that
kind of
interview.
get that sense of like, he's just kind of throwing a lot of things into this.
a lot of it works in microdoses,
yeah.
but as a big picture, I'm trying to understand what it was all
Yeah.
supposed to add up to. I totally get
Well,
that.
but that's because I read a lot of like, well, yeah, like I also though it's like he's lied in interviews, which I find
Yeah.
weird, and then admitted about it. Like he said the 217 thing didn't mean anything, and he said that in a few interviews. Then I read another interview last night where he said I've been lying about that. It does mean something, and it's like it's okay. Like I thought that was dumb, but again, like, yeah, I read the two kind of like leading theories where, like, yeah, it's around the time of like that his friend could have died, but also the 217 is like there was 19 people involved in that classroom. Two of them were, you know, the kid and the
Right.
teacher, and the 17 of them that went missing. That could be like whatever, like, but again, like, it's weird because I read a lot about a lot of people were talking about this in the same context of like the conversations around elevated horror and all that kind of thing, and how this is like kind of a refreshing thing in that regard. But it's like I I didn't find it that way because to me, like, I again, like, we could do a whole episode, I feel like, on the concept of elevated horror, but like to me, like, I don't like the term because I think it devalues the idea that like schlocky fun horror is not good.
Yeah.
And like it can be good. Like there's a lot of shit horror movies, obviously, but like they can play. They don't have to have a deep, big meaning or theme to be a good movie, a great movie, even. And so, like this to me didn't hit that vein, and that's why like I'm much more hot for Barbarian than I was on this movie, which seemingly is like the polar opposite of most people. But like as an experience, like it had all these weird kind of nuggets that you guys all just mentioned. To, like if you want to read themes into it or whatever, but it never elevated itself to the point of just really fun and enjoyable. Like there's a lot of like
Yeah.
spacious moments in the end. Again, like I liked and I thought was really funny, like that very end, like you said, Brandon. But like it wasn't consistent enough there to make it like a great experience that way. So like it really kind of just felt like it just gets lost in the shuffle,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have strong themes that are super impactful, but it doesn't become just like a fun enough, you know, kind of exercise in the genre either.
Yeah, I think
I
this
think
movie is like a perfect example of like the parts are greater than the whole.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
would agree for
absolutely.
sure. What are some of the parts that are great? I was gonna say I love all the dirty needle horror in this. Like again, spoiling
Yeah.
here. I think the first time the officer pricks his finger on that needle and he punches the guy and then he sees the dash cam, that was probably the first real instance of me clocking, oh, there is some great like macabre humor in this. Like again, back to the barbarian thing where you've got a character who is acting out and abusing his position of power, like Justin Long as a movie producer, actor guy who was, you know, in a sex scandal or whatever. Now you have a cop with police brutality, and yeah, like later in when the guy's tweaking and he goes to stab through the tent and he hits him with the face of the dirty needles, and then they're in the squad car. And he goes, "Do you have AIDS?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know, man." And it's like
Yeah.
again, that's horrifying and hilarious. So like. But even that was beyond that halfway mark before they started establishing some of those tones. And again, maybe I need to rewatch Barbarian, but I felt like I was laughing a little earlier, at least when sorry, not Adam Driver, Justin Long got introduced. I was immediately starting to giggle because he's a funny guy. He was in this movie for like a cameo. And in, again, maybe that was comedy earlier in the movie, but it's just, you know, him kind of like, hey, man. Like, and
I
that's
mean,
really it. And I was like, haha, I know that guy.
the cut to like them in the house like showing the footage after the wife said no got
Yeah,
like a
she's just
good
like,
laugh, but like
yeah, not like
also the
obvious stuff.
needle, the second needle bit where he gets stabbed in the face got a
Big
big
audience
reaction
reaction.
in my
Yeah.
crowd too. There were some
Which is
like
great.
good moments. Also, the car scene with the when the mom comes out of the doorway with the
Oh,
scissors. That was
yeah.
probably my
Yeah.
favorite sequence. Like, because it kind of plays with your expectations, and it's just
Yeah.
done really effectively and creepily.
All the
I think
physical acting in
he's
this movie is really good too. Like
yeah
the way they walk and run, like it's unnerving out of focus in the background. It's very like
yeah.
good restraint for some of those
I
things.
think Zach Kreger has chops. Like he knows how to build
Yeah.
tension. He knows how to like cut the tension with comedy. He's a good filmmaker. It's just I think my problems with this movie were mostly in the writing and like yeah, all of that stuff. But yeah, the ending too, we can I think that the final sequence was great. The ending kind of fell flat for me. Like it just kind of ends abruptly and like
And on a huge bummer note, like
yeah.
I not like I need a happy ending, but I mean I feel like even Barbarian had like a little bit more of a bow on it than this. Where this one ending the way it does, where it's like his mommy and daddy are being fed soup still by somebody else. Haha. Some of the kids can speak again, but a lot of them don't. The end.
Well,
Like,
that's one of the gaps too that I thought this movie like I am okay like so in the marketing they lie to you, right? They say all the kids go missing. She shows up and nobody's there. And I like that they did that in the marketing. Like I'm okay, lie to me in marketing. I don't care. But in the context of the movie itself, the thing opens with that voiceover of like this little girl telling like a ghost story effectively, and it's
yeah.
clearly written that way, it's delivered that way, like she's telling this like creepy story at like a
Happened to
sleepover
a
kind of
friend of
thing.
mine type thing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And but like they lie in that part where they go the kids never came back and like all this thing. So like even some of this setup just felt a little sloppy to me. Like you would
Disingenuous.
not say in the story 2 years after the fact that the kids never came back because like you would just say the kids went missing and whatever else and then like the things would kind of unfold. So like again, it's a minor thing, but it all kind of that alone wouldn't be enough to derail, but it's like all of these other parts with the script that kind of come across to me as whether it's like sloppy or just not as good. Like that's just another kind of feather in the cap. So like I just thought it was and like the explanation, like, okay, I know it's hard to pay off a really interesting setup and like a mystery. Like it's not easy to have super awesome, satisfying conclusions to these kinds of things. But like the fact that they were just hanging out in the fucking basement of the first creepy house that we like immediately
Yeah.
gleaned, like so from the first character, I immediately was like, I didn't know that they were necessarily in the house in the basement, but I'm like, well, obviously they're involved. Like there's this has something to do with it. The kids were here or
Yeah,
what? Like
without switching perspectives, you would have assumed that if the movie continued from Julia Garner's perspective as the main and only protagonist, she would have been at the police station, be like, "We gotta get in that house, we gotta go," and then they would be in the house, be like, "This is creepy and fucked up," and the mystery gets like expanded on. But yeah, you're right.
right.
Like as soon as she's there, you're like, you the viewer, like, this is very important and probably the answer, and then we
Well,
jump
like
around.
and it's not subtly weird. Like the fact that like they're sitting there catatonic in the couch, she sees them jump scares. If they at least moved them or like gave them some sense of like space, but then the fact that she looks back again and they haven't moved and all this shit, it's like, okay, well clearly like this is not normal. Like
I thought
this
they
is
were
really
dead.
fucked up.
Like
Right,
those are
yeah,
And
corpses,
so
and
it's
then you
like
would call to be like, get the medics out here. There's a boy in a house of dead people, like something like that.
right. And so like I just like again like I felt like there was like the one clever bit I'll give it was the fact that they did the witch on the car and like that was ultimately what it was, just
Yeah.
the wrong target. Like I enjoyed that part was funny, but like yeah, I just felt a lot of the sloppiness in the rest of it. And I gotta be honest, I'm kind of blown away by the overwhelming positive reaction to this because like I mean like again like I read everything because like like expressed it was like well like I'm curious why other people feel so strongly and it was like well it was that the characters were like nuanced and I'm like well they weren't nuanced, they just had like a flaw each. Like, and it
Yeah.
never explores that in a really deep, meaningful way. It never does anything with it other than to show us that, like, oh, she's a great teacher, but she's also an alcoholic and, like, fools around with married men or whatever. Like, okay. And then, like,
Yeah.
Alden Ehrenreich
You don't
seems like a
really
very
spend
nice
enough
guy.
time with everyone to really get invested in them too.
Exactly.
Which is kind of a
And so,
pro
like, it's like
to leave
throwaway.
wanting more from what they created. But I also like you guys are saying, the only thin veil as we're talking about that I could really piece is because I do want to talk about the witch herself. When we see her talking to the principal later on, and he's like, "Oh, her parents are ill. They have a problem with consumption or something." And I feel like maybe
Mm.
that's the theme because yeah, it's the unfaithful husband. Maybe he's a sex addict. Maybe he's just a regular drinking addict. Then you have the drug addict, literally, and then even like Benedict Wong when he's with his partner, which is again that was a really cute, fun scene. He had the Mickey Mouse and his partner had the Minnie Mouse. So I liked like a lot of the details they put into those again the micro doses of greatness here, and just overall good bits and scenes and beats. They're watching a nature documentary, kind of like the classic thing when a lecture or a TV show's on a movie, it's always about the theme. And this one, yeah, it's an ant being controlled by a Last of Us fungus virus, which is like real, and it's
Yeah.
gross. And they're sitting there and he's just eating the hot dog spread and carrots. I love that hot dogs are in both movies we're talking about. But yeah, so again, it's maybe people having vices. Maybe and it's the principal. He's eating the gummy bears in his office. He's eating when he's watching this gross nature documentary that's thematically about like parasites and people living off people. So again, it's so thinly veiled. I don't know if I missed it, or it's so thickly layered that I don't know if I felt like it was over explaining stuff. But yeah, maybe that's the theme there. Is just yeah, like you said, he was coping with, losing a friend, and then also his previous substance issues. None of that really was in Barbarian, and I think that soared. And then this is all here, and I found it lacking. And again, it's every character's got a vice. I don't know what Josh Brolin's would be really. He's just as
Well,
obsessed
that
as
he was a
like
shitty dad, right? Like that's his whole monologue
Yeah.
of like
yeah. I
his
never thought he
son
Never
was
was
said
to
he
the
do.
loved
bully,
his son. Yeah.
right? And his son was the bully kid. Like,
But it has
Mhm.
nothing to do
and
with consumption or addiction, just like
well,
neglect. His
yeah,
neglected
and like that's
theme.
why I think like but like again, I think it's giving this movie more credit to really try and dig in and find like really meaningful things. Like
Yeah.
again,
Yeah,
it's
because if it
so
didn't land, it may not have been
surface.
there.
Right. And like again, like I even the consumption part, like I thought was kind of like a to me at least
Odd.
when I like first hit it, it was like, okay, well this person's probably like really old. Like, like not just like literally old, like probably like, like hundreds of years or 100+ years, like because to refer to, consumption. But also I thought it was just like a clever play on the idea that she is consuming them, like however the magic kind
Yeah.
of works to leech their life or whatever.
But then it
Um,
didn't like work. That's the thing. Like she was like, "Oh, once I get all these children, then I'll be better." But then seemingly her magic wasn't working anyway. So like I was like a bit confused
well,
about
they
the
That's
do
actually a
have
good
mechanics of
a
it.
parallel.
Like is she sucking the life force? Is she just controlling them? Like what?
I
It
think
was
that's a good
Yeah.
definitely a
parallel.
life. Well, she does evolve, but like no, they definitely do a thing where they like she looks like her look evolves in the movie.
Yeah.
Like
She
she
does get
looks
more
much
life.
older, and then she has a bit more youth to her as she like goes throughout. But it's
By the
not like
time,
overwhelmingly noticeable. Like it's not like she goes from 100 to 40 or something like that. But it
I
is
think
more there, yeah.
you totally could draw that comparison. Now that you're jogging my mind here. She does show up. Does look old, sickly, and frail. She then controls the parents, and she's a little bit more functionable. And then, yeah, in those Alex scenes, when she's like, "Oh, if you get the children," he's like, "I thought your mommy and daddy would fix me," almost like a drug addict needing a fix. Like once I get my hit,
Yeah.
I'll be good. I can move on. And like the drug addict, that's not exactly it. She gets 20 kids, and yeah, she goes from like 100-year-old to like a spry 65-year-old. You see her at like Benedict Wong's house, and she's like very animated and creepy and energized for such an old, creepy woman. Um, again, Zach Kreger, I think, has a thing for old creepy women. Like between this and
Yeah,
Barbarian,
he's got some
nailed it.
complex for
I,
sure.
I even thought that must be the same actress. Like I felt like I was seeing a lot of the same like thin piece of hair, skull shape, But I got to reference that, cut that maybe. But yeah, the thing is like, yeah, I definitely think she is like some sort of like witch that has to consume people's energy parasitically, the way a drug addict consumes their family's energy, the way an alcoholic. So I guess now that we're talking about it, I'm like, oh, I guess that does kind of land even with the witch's character. But
Yeah,
again, the
see,
Josh
you're
Brolin character
drawing
has
these
zero.
themes together in a way that
It's like the
that I
movie
think is
23. I'm
giving the
connecting
movie a
the
bit more
dots.
credit, but I think you're
I'm
doing a
elevating the
great
horror.
job of interpreting it.
Thank you. I
Um,
appreciate that. I had to try my best because I wanted to love this movie, but
yeah,
like I said, I think I loved all the parts of it, and they just didn't mesh. So,
yeah.
um, yeah. Is there any other standout things like pros or cons? I'd say like I would love to air out some of the pros. Like, yeah, we talked about like I think cinematography wise, I saw the behind the scenes when when she's being chased in that corner store from Benedict Wong, when he's been weaponized. And they're like, big wide shots. A lot of this movie has some really masterfully done wides and close up wides, which I love. And they do that thing, a great tracking shot. They go through the door, they hand it to a guy on rollerblades, and he's scooting through the aisles. Like I think filmmaking, like you said, Adriana, is like pretty top tier. But yeah, story
Yeah.
wise, and maybe the way they
Apparently
decided to piece it together.
he got a lot of like advice and tips and stuff from David Fincher, which I think comes through.
Definitely.
Um,
I think, well, I was actually a bit more split on the visual side. There's a lot of great shots. Even like the thing I like is the door camera when people shut the door and the camera's clearly on the door and stuff like that. There was a few instances of that I liked, but there's been reports, and I thought there was two things on this that I had seen was the dark scenes are not good. There's a few sequences where like you can't see stuff like, and I listened on my way to Connor's house today. I listened to the Red Letter Media guys, and they talked about the same thing about they couldn't see certain parts. And then I also saw like a theater, it was just like a picture, but like our projector is fine, the movie is not, like is lit poorly, you're not getting a refund or whatever, like, so
Brutal.
that's a known thing. And I was curious about your guys' theater because the Red Letter Media guys, I assumed when I saw this last night that it was my theater, but they also brought up the point that the audio was very quiet.
I'm really
And
glad
I
you reminded me
agreed with
this.
that because I, especially at the beginning of it, I was
The
like,
beginning.
oh, this feels very like muted and quiet. And then, and I'm like, but again, I chalked it up to the theater, but the fact that I wasn't alone in that experience would
I'm
indicate that
really
it was, again, that something they
uh,
did.
I'm super glad you brought that up, and I was gonna leave it out because it got better, like the mix got better, and again, like I saw this at a popular theater, good theater, is like theater number one, so I'm assuming that's the most upkept when you go see normal screenings if it's not IMAX. But yeah, funny enough, my two like nitpicks from my viewing experience outside of like the lady talking the entire movie, which we'll get to, but yeah, that opening when it's like it is a black screen, and like again, not to go on this tangent, but like in film school or whatever, they're like, if you're making a movie or a TV show especially, avoid having fully black screens because people assume their device is broken, especially for TV. You come back from a commercial break and you get a black screen narration. That black screen narration, the door to the lobby was wide open, and I just had like half the screen hazy yellow from the hallway lights, while this happened in my small town was whispering over it. And like I had a lady with her husband be like, I again, they weren't speaking English, but I can only assume if she's like my mom, because she was like a middle-aged woman, and she's like, what's this? Who is she saying that to? What are we? Is she talking to
Oh my
us? Like, I'm
God.
assuming that's what she was saying, because it was like that kind of cadence of like a confused middle-aged woman.
Yeah, yeah.
And I did like give her like and she gave me a thumbs up halfway through, a little shush. But yeah, like, there's so many scenes in this movie that are very dark, very atmospheric. And once you kind of lull into it, you forget it. Like you're talking about the opening, I did find the mix was extremely quiet. And it was hard to kind of dial in, especially like, when you don't see it at home. But then again, we joke about this because I got the Samsung QLED TV versus the OLED TV. the darkness levels in my bright living room. I have to watch movies at night in my living space. So another pro for theaters is you do, even when it's not perfect, you do get the best viewing picture quality most of the time. However, yeah, you then have to deal with certain people and maybe theater glitches, like again, just the 5 to 10 Gen Z theater attendants that were like also in the lobby, 5 of them huddled around being like, "Yo, Zyre, did you get Shan's number?" And when I was sitting there and the door hadn't closed and it was like ruining the atmosphere, I was like, "Can you guys stop trying to rizz up your coworkers and attend the theater properly here, please? I don't have to get up in the middle row, cut 4 people off, shut
Yeah.
the door." So I too, I was going to listen to the Red Letter Media thing, but I was like, I don't want to be biased going in. But I'm glad other people are kind of nitpicking it the way we might, because yeah, I found the mix a little quiet and a lot of the scenes very atmospheric, but yeah, very dark. And I always have that moment where I'm like, oh, I can't watch this at home with my girlfriend because it has to be a perfectly set up like dark time of day. Because yeah, not every projection, not every screen, even in the modern age, is gonna get it right.
Yeah.
But oh,
I was gonna say I didn't really notice the audio, but also there was like a group of girls talking through the whole movie, so that was a bit distracting. But then maybe the fact that I could hear them so much it speaks
Right.
to the fact that the movie's mix was really quiet. I don't know.
yeah,
On
I
the visual side, I think like there was moments like particularly at the end when the parents are like standing in the doorway with the salt line, and like that was like good. I like that was a good visual, but then like in that same sort of sequence when Josh Brolin is fighting the drug character, like that was so dark. You could like that could have been anybody and it would have made like as much of an impact. Like you could barely see who he's fighting and all of that kind of thing. So like you got
that was
enough of the sense
also
of what was going on, but it was
It
still tougher
might
to see.
might have been a bit your theater, a bit the movie, because like I feel like for me it wasn't that bad at Scotiabank here in Montreal, but it definitely was a dark movie. Like the nighttime scenes were like overly dark for my liking, I guess, but it wasn't as bad as you're describing in my experience. So
it did work a lot for me, like that overbearing darkness, especially. And this is like a pro, I would even say, to this credit, is the scene where Josh Brolin has the nightmare. It's very reminiscent of the astral projection when you're watching like the first 2 or 3 Insidious movies. And I had that mental note of like, wow, this is like the creepiest astral projection style nightmare I've seen since those movies. But yeah, and again, I thought it was very intentional at that time. But yeah, well, like when you talk about the finale, which is over the house in different areas, and again, it's all very darked out. Yeah, I think when you're describing like the crackhead fight scene, which I'm like surprisingly a comedic bit, I'm like crackhead fight scene sounds hilarious, but yeah, it was like the whole audience was howling because it was so tense in like the scenes with like the parents upstairs that when they cut back to Josh Brolin being like looking around, and then next thing you know is like jumping at him and he's just dumbing him, throwing him over his shoulder, over left and right, and just punching him in the ground. The audio helped a lot because that helped you follow along. But I didn't specifically notice it there because I think a lot of people were laughing, and it was like a good little injection to the more tense and like borderline traumatic. Like I kept thinking, man, if I was this little boy Alex, I probably would have rather been one of the 18 children that disappeared than the one that didn't. Because it's like I don't know if I could walk back seeing my parents stab themselves in the face with a fork and then try to kill me in a bathroom while I stole a witch's wand, etc. So yeah, technically speaking, I guess you're kind of right. And again, even with Barbarian, that was a movie that came out, I think, more pandemic-y, and I ended up not seeing it in theaters because it was also, I don't think it was marketed as much, and it was more mysterious. And this is kind of a bit I wanted to discuss. The titling of these 2 Kreger movies. In Barbarian, I assume the Barbarian is the guy from like the 60s who traps women. He's barbaric. His actions are barbaric. And the themes of that movie are about like the threat assessment between men and women. I thought those were like more cleverly interwoven with the characters and the way they introduce stuff. Where here, when the title's Weapons, and other than Josh Brolin seeing the M16 and saying, it's like they've been weaponized. And it's like, I don't need every, like the Family Guy joke of like, oh, they said the title of the movie, Superman 4, A Quest for Peace in the middle of the movie. I don't need the title drop, but, thematically, you do kind of wonder, where some of these choices came from when they didn't build the way that I was anticipating. And the things that surprised me were just like, again, great bits and moments. And again, it's almost like really great skits and individual short horror stunts. Like, again, the dirty needle horror, the witch possession stuff with the wand and the bowl. And like, yeah, like a lot of elements really worked. And it did hone me in from some of that technical issue. But I did have a huge gripe with the start of the movie being so dark on a black screen with the narration that was a little quiet, especially with like, I think some sort of woman speaking Cantonese at like no attempt to whisper. And it was just like, and someone's like, oh, hey, did you see that thing? And they're like whispering to their friend. Like, that's fine for me. I kind of even like that. It makes me kind of get in the headspace a little bit of people around me. But yeah, when it's just like a second language I'm not understanding, but also just like, not whispering like this, but like, hey, what's that going on over there? You're like, shut up. It's pitch black. There is all you hear, like the strings of the score, like ramping up, and score is really good in this too. Sorry, that was a tangent, but yeah, score's great. And
well, let me
yeah.
give you one last nitpick too that I had that really drove me up the wall too while we were watching it was Josh Brolin's big investigation where he's like, what direction was the kid running out
Yeah.
of the house at? And I'm like, and so this is one of the things that like I really thought, again, especially with having this whole angle of the police officer, we got zero insight into the investigation part of the whole thing. And I thought that was like such a dumb missed opportunity because when you're writing like, okay, is there some sort of oversight that the cops made like to justify such a basic thing of like what directions did the kids head when they went out the door, and that Josh Brolin was the one to crack that like
And the way he cracked it was just
Just two
intersecting.
houses.
Like no one else put that together. No one else would have thought to like.
I was
look
expecting at least
the
3
ring
or
cam
4
footage.
houses, like the way police try to triangulate a signal kind of thing. And yeah, he does the 2 and he's like, this must be it. I thought he would have had a few more houses. And again, I wish we stayed in the main characters more. Like, again, the drug addict scenes were great of him breaking into a house and a fun perspective and the needle horror. But yeah, if they just lingered more in his investigation or they lingered more in Jennifer Gardner. And again, I think the police stuff, yeah, like you said, missed opportunity. If instead of all this back and forth about him and his wife trying to have a kid, her being an actor that's out of town or something, the nepotism dad thing that was going on there, if they retweak that to be a little bit more like the genuine cop plot, because the only good police work he does is at the expense of his like shady cop behavior. It's like he only goes to the house because the drug addict is like, well, I could still press charges for police brutality, and it's like that pressure cooker there. Again, that works, but yeah, the police stuff was completely misdone
I
for
think
the investigation.
if you're being very generous, you could say that it's like a comment on the systems sort of failing and like police incompetence and stuff like that. But I think that's giving the movie too much credit. I think it was just like kind of lazy.
Yeah, it works in like so much well to those individual scenes. Like, again, like I like the reason why he goes in alone, and again, there's no backup coming for an officer down, or like, hey, gee, we sure haven't seen that cop in like 8 hours. His shift ended. We should check up, get an APB out. It's because he's like going off the record so much because he essentially keeps fucking up. He keeps having like a bad day continue on. I think that was like writing wise a neat way to set us into this world where there is not going to be, like you guys said, like friends and family not checking in or whatever. And like, again, maybe I'm also like projecting what I thought worked really well, even as you guys said, like, but yeah, it's tough because even with the way they do like the weekend at Bernie's thing with the family to kind of diffuse the initial suspicions, I really did feel like that could only go so far. And like you said, then I have family members, and then I started like having headcanon, like maybe the witch possessed her as a child and it's a generational trauma thing. But again, I think that's just being conditioned to like elevated horror for so long that I am gleaming like parts of the screenplay that maybe weren't there at all. So yeah, and again with Barbarian, everything there I felt just clicked into place. Even if some people said it wasn't tonally as consistent as they wanted, I thought it was woven really well. And then here it just, like I said, it was a visual feast with a ton of really good like moments. But yeah, the finale and everything, like, just didn't click. But do you want to talk about the finale at all? I feel like we've
Well,
alluded
yeah,
it.
because I think it's related to kind of like the way that this movie for me didn't work in the way that it blends the horror and comedy like as organically. And I feel like the advantage in Barbarian is that the cut is supposed to feel very jarring. Like that's the whole point. You're wondering for a while, like, has the movie forgotten that it was a different movie because you have no idea why you're here and why we're watching this until that is revealed. And so that kind of sharp contrast works organically in that movie as a whole, because then that through line as they kind of blend as the movie ends, like it worked. This for me, the comedy felt very start stop, like the movie was very start stop. And like it's not that it didn't work, like I did laugh, and like there was like a few, like again those kind of creepy eerie moments, like Adriana, you said your favorite sequence was the haircut. Like that was definitely the most eerie I felt, like when
Mm-hmm.
she walks off screen and then you hear the door open, you're like fuck, like that was really good. And then again, like the whole like chase scene with Benedict Wong and she's like help me, and like no one cares, like the guy is just standing there.
Get out
Like,
of my
get out of my
store.
store. Yeah,
Yeah.
like shit like that. Like that was funny. And then like obviously the very end, like for me that was kind of like a good um like I like again it worked,
A good
but
escalation.
it's still kind of like this duality of like again it wasn't this dark foreboding thing that the movie starts off as and concludes as a really like action movie almost, as we're getting like POV shots of whoever that actress was, good on her,
It
like
was
running
almost,
through the doors and
you know what it
glass and
reminded
windows and
me
everything.
of? It reminded me of the final act of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like, and he's like running through
Hopping the
the back, yeah,
fences.
hopping fences and
Yeah.
stuff, trying to get home.
That's actually hilarious.
Yeah.
That's like the like possessed meth addict Ferris Bueller's Day Off cut, just ramming through windows. And I like that because like again, what Lila does tie back where it's like they've been weaponized, and yeah, these kids are like heat-seeking missiles, and like yeah, that really
Yeah.
shows you at the end. Like even again, editing wise, they're talking about them being heat-seeking missiles. Benedict Wong, once he's possessed and he's running with the eyes that he was doing with the
Yeah.
blood, and when you find out, and again, like the way they layer it sometimes did work. Like when you see him later, it's creepy, and you're like, how did that happen? And then they show it's his husband's face bashed in against his. That's why he's all demonic and look crazy looking.
It's not just that though. So that's kind of what I thought at the beginning, but if you watch that scene again, as he runs, every time they cut to him further down the way, his eyes have bulged more. So it's
Oh.
something like the possession does or whatever, but because Alden Aaron Rick or whatever the hell his name is, when his at the end when he's choking out Julia Garner, his eyes are kind of bulging a bit too. So again, it's like they don't explain it clearly, but it's definitely like it progresses as he's running. So when he leaves the house versus when he arrives there, his eyes are much more like protruding out or whatever. So that was just like an interesting detail too that I kind of flagged. And
Yeah, I
I
really
one
like
other thing
that.
kind of related to that, back to the horror kind of components, is that they're really good at that eerie feeling of like the way when she watches Alex go into the house at the very like in the first part of the movie, how the door just kind of naturally swings, like unnaturally I should say,
Yeah.
swings open and then swings closed.
And
Like
how it's
the
like
little details like that are really good.
unnaturally dark in the doorway too. Like you can't
Yeah.
see anything in the house. I thought those little details, yeah, those touches were
Yeah.
nice.
And you don't know if it's the door's opening by itself or if there's a creepy possessed person behind it just opening
Yeah.
it, and once you see those POVs, it does add that like, oh, is somebody opening the door like that for them? Or,
Mhm.
not that it matters, but yeah, like I think it layers in really well. And I think like what we were talking about, like each scene really building well, like, all the choices made per scene, like even at the start when the haircut thing happens, that first part of the movie, the first half was so tense because you as a Adriana said this at the Positions movie when you said it's so hard to watch characters make bad choices for 2 hours because
Yeah.
you start stressing. You're like, God, I would never have done that. Like he's
Yeah.
just compounding stress. But yeah, Jennifer Gardner, when she is kind of so
Julia,
depressed
you've
and
said Jennifer like 3 times.
oh, I wish she corrected me 3 times ago. Julia Gardner. Um, the teacher, when the teacher's in her car, and she's going further down the rabbit hole. When you see she's making very me move, making like a roadie with a
Yeah, I
gas
thought about
station
that, by
cup,
the way.
and she's filling it up, and she's already been warned and to not, go the like to not do this, and you're like, you as the audience member on
Yeah.
top of all the horror are like, oh my gosh, this character is a cop gonna show up when she's like, no, they're in the house, and you're like, you're drinking and driving again in Colorado, you the audience start kind of trying to predict where this is going because there's a lot of good tension building beats in all these scenes. And again, same thing with like the needle, like when he gets poked and he punches the guy out, you're like, oh shit, like that was bad, and then it's the camp, oh that was worse. And I think like they build so much momentum in every scene that, yeah, like when you're saying the purposeful cutaway to another perspective in Barbarian was meant to be jarring and interesting because it fills in the movie. These cuts just halted those really good scenes that were building and building and building. Yeah, that with the horror visuals, like this movie is awesome. But yeah, by the end of it, and they have the heat-seeking kids all gang up on her and rip her head apart. Like great practical effects too for that. Like,
Yeah, I love that they went there.
yeah,
Those kids
all the
must be
arms
so
ripped out.
traumatized.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the things I want to knock the horror components about too, is that like again these dream sequences and things that they do, and just like how she kind of pops up, like throughout the movie. On the surface, it's like creepy, and you're like, oh, that's interesting, but like, why?
Yeah,
Why is
logistically,
she appearing for these characters that have not interacted with her directly at that point, are not like being a nuisance specifically at that point? Like
Like, are you talking about
it was
the principal, how she shows up at his house? Or?
Gladys.
No, no,
yeah,
no,
well,
no,
no, she
like,
pops up like everywhere.
well, her appearing at his house makes sense, but I mean, why is she
Yeah.
appearing in Julia Garner's dream before Julia Garner really starts
Yeah.
going down the rabbit hole
yeah.
of Alex?
Or in the
Why is
woods
she
of the
appearing-
crackhead, like in front of the crackhead.
Why is she
like, why
appearing
Yeah.
in
there?
the dream of Josh Brolin's character, who has not interacted with her at all, or like even flirted with the idea of interacting with Alex? Like he's totally focused on
My
on
only
her.
thought is that because the drug addict was in the house and saw her, was in her like realm, and same thing with Julia Garner, she was at the window and was in her realm, like her geographical space. But yeah, you're right, the Josh Brolin connection for his like lucid dream nightmare thing doesn't make sense because he was never at the house. He was investigating and inquisitive, but like if you want to say it's like because he saw the possessed people because he was in the proximity. Yeah, you're right. I think the Josh Brolin hallucination, again, great visually and very entertaining. But yeah, I think with what it's setting up and what you could logically try to jump to, it's hard to jump to
I
that
think
one.
it's
That is
just another one of those lazy things of like, oh,
Yes.
this will look super creepy and be effective, and you could just like chalk it up to witchcraft. She's a witch. Why wouldn't she be able to appear in people's dreams? But like, that's just, to me, that's just like lazy writing.
She also looked
so-
like a clown too, like she had like
Yeah.
and I thought that was going to be a motif where she was going to be like some sort of like, again, long legs 80s pop star thing. But no, it
She's
was just like
an old
horrific
lady with
grandma.
bad makeup.
Yeah, yeah.
in a bad way.
In a bad
And
way,
it could
many
be
bad
coming
ways.
out of Fantasia too, but I was like, if I see one more fucking horror movie where I have to sit through another dream sequence, I'm gonna lose my shit. Like, it's just like, it is such an overdone trope to just like,
Yeah.
we need a scary moment, so let's just throw in a random dream sequence that we can explain away by saying it's a dream sequence that has to have no relevancy to the plot other than to just give you like show a character that will come up later and try to scare you. Like I none of those served kind of an organic purpose for me in the movie. And again, I can't pretend it's not at least partially impacted by the fact that we were at Fantasia a genre film festival. So much of those movies are horror, but there was a point where I was like, holy fucking dream sequences, like this is crazy, wild, overdone. And this one kind of fell into that same trap for me,
Yeah,
which,
for
like,
sure.
again, if you don't watch them, whatever I'm at, 45 movies or something, it's
I
probably not going to bother you as much, but it definitely stood out to me in
I
this
did
too.
like the moment with Josh Brolin after the dream when he wakes up from his dream and is just like, "What the fuck?" Like it
Yeah,
kind of
Yeah,
that
like
got a
yeah,
good laugh.
undercuts it a little bit just because
yeah.
you're throwing in that bit of humor and like self awareness. But yeah, I agree. I felt like a dream sequence is kind of like a little bit of a cop out way to just
Yeah.
add horror for the sake of it. But yeah,
Unless they Five Nights at Freddy's it, which is not a good movie, but they add dream sequences to
don't
that movie
don't tell
to give the
Ty.
character, yeah, to give the character something to do to piece together what happened. And that's where I thought it was going. Like when he sees the M16 in the sky with the time on it, I thought he was going to be like, my son was going to shoot up the school. I'm a bad dad, and all these kids would have been the victims. There's a Final Destination timeline. Yeah, I don't know. I'm project like I'm trying to figure it out, but yeah, totally, yeah. Dream sequences without any meaning other than like let's scare the audience is kind of how I felt like revisiting the first half, the later half, and kind of like some of my complaints with Long Legs. I wish they stuck in that first half. I wish it was more ethereal, ghostly stuff instead of like a literal witch. Because yeah, those dream sequences would have paid off if they were haunted or possessed or whatever. But in the end, it was like they went a different route, which is fine. But yeah, then that starts to make me think, oh, were those dream sequences for the audience? To
Mhm.
because clearly everybody's already traumatized. We didn't need to see them having nightmares and their nightmares from a POV to be like, oh, Julia Garner must be really upset, or oh yeah, the guy with the missing son, clearly is upset. Again, it's
Yeah.
good to have that monologue where he's like, I'm sorry, I never said it, but I love you. It's like um, small pro before we close out. I would say I'm just really glad that this movie was recast with Julia Garner and Josh Brolin. Josh Brolin was supposed to be Pedro Pascal, and
Oh
I
God,
Can you
probably would
yeah.
have
imagine?
skipped this movie if that was the case, just because I'm the one on the Pedro Pascal like fatigue train. Like I like him, but holy cow, if he was in 3 box office movies right now, this 2 month window or whatever, on top of all of his other filmography, I would have been like. Plus, I think I can't picture anybody but Josh Brolin now. I think he added a lot of like stoic weight to this movie, where I feel like Pedro has that vibe, but it's a bit softer. I think I needed like a military-looking dad with like a huge chin and Thanos style glare.
Yeah, I
So yeah,
think they partially rewrote that when the casting changed, like, because like, it was kind of geared towards, like, yeah, you got to believe this guy's kind of like, a dick and whatever. Like, that's not going to be, like, like, kind of wouldn't tell his kid that he loved him or whatever. But yeah, no, I think, like, yeah, I really liked the casting, at least the rumors that I read about, like, the whole original bit. I feel like this cast was better than what I read on the other stuff. But again, who knows how true any of that was. But yeah, I guess, like, to wrap my thoughts up, like, kind of going through this conversation, I think I am going to fall, like, on a 2.5 on this for us, like a
wow,
mid scale. Not because, like, I there's enough there. Like, again, I liked it a bit more, but I think it's more of an indication of, like, my mixed feelings than it is like this movie is, like, overwhelmingly mid or anything like that. It's like there's highs and lows, but there's just so much of it that didn't work. And ultimately, really, the thing is, like, how did I feel while watching it? I kind of felt nothing. Like, I was kind of, like, a little intrigued and creeped out at the beginning, but the longer that went, the less of that I was, and it didn't replace that feeling with anything else. There was a few, like, again, high moments. Again, the ending was really funny, but that's like a 3 4 minute sequence that really kind of goes good for me and I really enjoy, but, like, that doesn't justify the whole rest of it for me. So I think really that's kind of where I'm gonna come down on it. Like, even nothing I read kind of made me feel more confident about things I might have missed, or, like, it just didn't affect me in a way that I really kind of enjoyed. So that's where I'm gonna fall on this one, I think.
yeah, I would say mostly landed for me. I liked almost all of it. I loved certain parts of it. Just didn't stack up to the same bar that I felt like Barbarian had. So critically, I gave it a 3.5, and I felt like I was low. I watched Woman in the Yard, a movie that came out that nobody saw this year, and that's a movie about creepy, ghostly women appearing. There's dream sequences and there's themes of child neglect. So I would say this movie is a lot better than that movie. Woman in the Yard is good, but I wouldn't rate it higher than this. So I feel good giving it like the 3.5. I feel like, I don't think that's generous, but I am shocked that you were so down on it. So I'm glad we could hash that out. That's again what I love about the podcast, because I think all three of us came in being like mixed. What do you guys think? And that's kind of a nice change from, somebody being a stan and someone being an absolute hater, and or all three of us being like, what a great time. I would, yeah. Did you like it? I liked it. So yeah, Adriana, do you have any final thoughts? Any crazy experiences you want to share?
I mean, my final kind of thoughts on this is that there's a lot about it that I liked. I thought it was well done and well acted and all of that. There were great moments, but the parts just did not cohere for me. And like you said, Shay, like in the moment, in my experience of it, I was like, didn't feel too much. Like it wasn't too scary. It wasn't like hilarious. It kind of dragged a little bit, especially in the middle for me. So yeah, it really was just like the parts are better than the whole kind of movie for me. And maybe like diverging from both of you, that's kind of exactly how I felt about Barbarian too. Like that movie is one that just like I enjoyed, but just didn't fully cohere. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, we'd love to see more from Zach Kreger. And I think this is far from a bad movie, but yeah, I just wish it stuck the landing, which is such a nitpick. Like we talked with Fantasia, it's a miracle anything gets made. This movie is definitely one of the better ones I feel like I've seen this year. But yeah, totally agree. Didn't fully click with me, even though it was, full of amazing parts and really good tension building. Just that was it. So a funny thing I was going to say is leaving this theater with a few nightmare experiences. There was what I call the final boss performative male. He was a guy that had a great vintage thrift outfit. He had a matcha and a tote bag, and he had 6-inch like platform Doc Martens, and he completely wiped out going down the staircase at the end. Like he fell like 3-4 like steps just tripping. He caught himself on the railing, and his girlfriend, who like almost got bulldozed over too. And I just thought I'd share that with you guys before we close out, because I died, and I felt like seeing him in the lobby after when he was trying to be nonchalant. I was like, bro, you can no longer aura farm at the Cineplex here. I know you totally wiped out in that theater. Yeah, what about you? Do you have any nightmare experiences?
A good theater moment and a good segue into
wear good footwear
to close this off. I think like if there's a group of annoying people at your movie and they're talking through the whole thing, and some good Samaritan in the theater takes it upon themselves to shush those jerks, do not shush the person shushing them. Don't shame the shamer. They're doing a public service. Okay, don't be that asshole.
Amen.
Amen. I love that. It's like, who watches the watchers, but don't shush the shushers.
Who shames the shamer? Who shushes the shushers?